to build more bridges, cross those rivers, yet modern man enslaves his conscience. The undertow of blame still flows between.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and as always you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball and on Instagram at redrock_bball, and of course go check out Basketball Monster's Twitter account at baskmonster, BASKMONSTER. You can find me also on Facebook at facebook.com/redrockbasketball, where you can watch this show broadcast live every day. Except for yesterday. I didn't do a show yesterday. I was out of the house yesterday from about 7:30 till about 10 p.m. And so by the time I got home, there was no show happening. So I do apologize for that. But we are back in business today to break down all of Saturday's action and then preview all of Sunday's games. So
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start off with the perfect lineups from Saturday's NBA action. On FanDuel, we had Mick Conley at 56.8, Tone Parker at 34.3, DeMar DeRozan at 55.3, and newly minted starter Big Normie Powell had 24.8. You know, I'm pretty happy about Norm Powell starting. I'm less happy about the player's position that he took, but I am happy about him starting. Kawhi Leonard, 65.1, Evan Turner, 34.1, Paulie Millsap at 57.3, Draymond had 43.1, and JaVale McGee had 20.8 for a total of 391.6, and that cost $58,800. Over on DraftKings, it was Mike Conley at 60.75, DeMar DeRozan at 57.75, Big Normie Powell 26.5, Paulie Millsap 60.5, Draymond Green 45.5, Tone Parker 35.5, Kawhi at 71, and Pat McCaw at 32 for a total of 389.5 points, and that cost the full $50,000 over on DraftKings. All right, let's talk about the action that actually did go down on Saturday. The first one of those was the early game, as the first game tends to be on the weekend, and that was the Toronto Raptors and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Raptors even up the series 2 games apiece with a victory here in Milwaukee, 87-76. And as I said, the Raptors did make a change to their starting lineup. Jonas Valanciunas went to the bench and Norman Powell started over him. Yeah, okay. There's a huge tick here for Casey, and that's getting Powell into the rotation. And Norm played 34 minutes and had 12, 4 and 4 with 3 triples and a block, and he needs to play every night. The player that he needs to play over is Damari Carroll. Now, Carroll only played 20 minutes, and that's fine. And Valanciunas played the same role. He played 22 minutes off the bench. That's what he'd been getting starting. But I will continue to say that I'm sure you can squeeze another 6 minutes or so out of Valanciunas. And he is still a good player. It just does not fit anything that Casey does. Valanciunas had 12 and 5 in his 22 on perfect 100% shooting. As for Norm, he deserves to start. He deserves to start over DeMar Carroll because Carroll is terrible. Carroll is worse than Powell. Carroll is worse than Tucker. Carroll is worse than Delon Wright. And the other move that Casey made was elevating Wright and playing him more minutes over Corey Joseph. Again, something that we had called for. Joseph played just the 8 minutes while Delon played 11. Interesting to see if they continue with this, but Norm Powell has to play. It's been clear to me since September, but it takes us until late April for Casey to go to that, and here we are with Norm. So a big night there. DeMar was great, 33, 9 and 5 with 4 steals, a huge step up from his 0 of 8 night that he had in Game 3, while Kyle Lowry 18, 4 and 4, one of his better playoff games as well, to be honest. As for Serge Ibaka, only played 26 minutes, did have some foul trouble, 10 and 8 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. And as I said, we had I didn't say this, but I'll say it now. Paddy Patterson went down to only 8 minutes, Corey Joseph down to 8 minutes, and PJ Tucker almost Tone Snelled it. He had 28 minutes for 1 rebound. No other stats, nothing. Nothing. No points, no assists, no steals, no blocks. 1 rebound in his 28 minutes. But it is a definite change. We're getting the Patterson minutes reduced. We're seeing Powell increased. We're seeing that switch with Valanciunas and Ibaka, and Corey Joseph really reduced in his actual playing time. I've said this plenty of times as well, but don't be shocked to see Delon Wright as the backup point guard next year and not Corey Joseph. That's what should happen. For the Bucks, Thon Maker, big game from Thon, 7 and 4 in 24 minutes, but 2 assists and 2 steals. A pretty solid performance, and he continues to look strong in the playoffs. Kid did not go back to Spencer Hawes or didn't use John Henson, so I'm pretty happy with all of that. So it was Maker and Munro splitting the center minutes, almost 24 apiece, or it was 24 apiece. Greggy had 14 and 9 with 2 steals and a block in his 24, a putrid 6 of 10 from the line, but otherwise not bad. And this was the Tone Snell game. We've been calling it for a while. At some point, he's going to have one of these games, and here it was. 38 minutes for Tone, 19 points with 5 triples and 4 rebounds. So that's your Tone Snell game. Expect a 2-3-pointer maybe in the next one. Yanni, 14, 9 and 4, 2 steals, 2 blocks, but horribly inefficient, while Chrissy Middleton had 10 and 11 in his 36. Brogo struggled, Daly struggled, and we still had Mick Beasley in ahead of Mirza Teletovic. So pretty much the exact same rotation from Kidd and the Bucks as we saw in their huge Game 3 victory. The Wizards and the Hawks. The Hawks get the victory to take the series to 2-1 in favor of the Wizards now. As for Washington, Johnny Wall was great. Ridiculously efficient for John as well. 10 of 12 from the field for 29, 4 and 7. And Brandon Jennings stepped up with 13 points and 4 assists. Now, for the Wizards, we had Otto Porter hurt his shoulder. He was unable to return to the game. He only played the 24 minutes and had 24 minutes and had 7 and 2 with a 3, and that's going to enable, if he can't go for Game 4, Kelly Oubre to play more. Now, Oubre had 9 and 5 with 2 steals and 3 triples, but he is not a strong fantasy option. Thomas Satoransky got some extra playing time, which I always enjoy. We still had no Jan Mihinmi either. Bradlesbeal wasn't a good night for him. 12 points on 20 shots, including just the 5 boards, while Bojan Bogdanovic also benefited from Porter's absence, scoring 11 points with 7 rebounds, but he's fairly fluky. 2 and 8 for Marcin Gortat was not a good Gortat night, even though we still didn't have Jan Mihinmi back. For the Hawks, Paulie Millsap was outstanding. 29 and 14 with 5 assists, a steal and 2 blocks. A big night there. And they went with Taurean Prince starting again. And he did it again. Another good night from Princey. 16 and 4 with 2 triples. 7 of 10 shooting is high, and it's not representative of what he will always do. But really good stuff from Prince. And you'd have to think he's keeping this role here for the rest of the regular season and probably heading into next off-season. So Taurean Prince really establishing himself here in this late season run. Tabo, just the 3 minutes. One of the weirdest coaching decisions to me throughout these playoffs is just the elimination of Cephalosha from the rotation. Timmy Hardaway had 8 points in his 29. And Kent Bazemore continues to be bad. A 1-1 with 8 points and 4 assists. So it's not a write-off, but he's way too much overpaid. That's not, I can't even form a sentence probably. That's how badly he's overpaid. Schroeder had 27, 2 and 9. Another big fantasy night for him, while Dwight, minutes limited once again. Closing games or closing quarters and halves with Mike Muscala. 5 and 11 for Howard in 27 minutes. This has been very similar to the Howard we saw in Houston last season, who started off fine, and in the last 2-3 months, just a complete elimination of him from the offense and even from the rotation. Just continually happening to Dwight at this point. Otherwise, it was a fairly significant win for the Hawks, 116-98, so we did see the rotation stretched a bit. We still got way too much Mike Dunleavy and way too much Jose Calderon, who played 15 and 13 minutes respectively. The Spurs and the Grizzlies probably definitely the... Well, actually, maybe you like the Warriors Blazers better, but this was a fantastic game. The Spurs and the Grizz went to overtime, and the Grizzlies pull it out to even the series at 2 games apiece. We have... We got a Marc Gasol game winner, but we'll start with the Spurs because Kawhi was stupid. Realistically, this is a crazy night from Kawhi. Didn't get the victory in the end, clearly, but 43, 8 and 3 in 44 minutes with 7 triples and 6 steals. That is an absolutely bonkers stat line. 47% on 30 shot attempts, 8 of 8 from the line. Just a huge night. Tone Parker also wound back the clock. Not only did he score 22 points with 5 assists, but he played 37 minutes. Just a huge night. And Parker has really stepped it up a gear in the playoffs, and he's limiting what guys like Pat Mills can do. The Undertaker, Dwayne Dedman, was out of this one with the illness, so Dave Lee started. He had 8 and 5 with a steal in his 33 minutes. I don't really understand that move. I much rather would have had, instead of having Aldridge and Lee as the 4-5, I would have gone back to Gasol as the center. He only played 21 minutes power and had 8 and 11, while Aldridge had 13, 2 and 1. To be honest, Aldridge has been piss poor for about 4 months. It feels like, maybe even longer. He just hasn't been good. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been good, and there is a slight distinction between that. Dan Green didn't do a huge amount. 5 points in 26 minutes for Dan, and Manu Ginobili went scoreless for the second time in these playoffs. On the Grizzlies side of things, Mike Conley, he did everything he could to match Kawhi. 35, 9, and 8 with 4 triples on 57% shooting, a stupid night, while Gasol, with that game winner, had 16 and 12 with 4 assists. We still had the Zach Randolph and Jim Ennis starting, and they didn't shoot the ball well. 12 and 11 on 12 shots for Zebo. Jim had 7 and 5 on 20% shooting, but they're providing more than Jermichael Green and Wayne Selden did in those early starts. Now, Green was fine here off the bench. He had 14 and 4 in 26 minutes, but he's not going to be a regular contributor. And Ennis is the pick of that really bad bunch of him and Harrison and Selden and Troy Daniels. Now, Harrison and Daniels had decent games. 6 points to Troy in 15 minutes and 7 and 3 with a steal and a block for Andy in his 20. But Ennis is the guy that's going to get the majority of those minutes, or you'd hope he does anyway, moving forward. The Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trailblazers. The Warriors overcame a significant margin to get the victory here in the end to put themselves up 3-0. There was no Kevin Durant. There was no Sean Livingston. There was no Matty Barnes. Again, for the second consecutive game, and the Warriors still got the win. Draymond, a real Draymond line. 9, 8, and 7 with 2 threes, 2 steals, and 6 blocks. A 4x5 there without anything going into double digits. Just a big night. Well, Steph without Kevin Durant had 34, 4 and 8 with 5 triples, and Klay Thompson had 24, 2 with 3 steals and 4 threes. So big nights from their stars. JaVale McGee had his second strong game. 14 points in 16 minutes for JaVale with a steal. His minutes are on the way up. They're never going to be huge, but he's producing some decent numbers that do make you want to stand up and take notice, especially when that's the guy I'm talking about. Especially when Zaza Pachulia goes scoreless in 10 minutes. And those minutes are switching towards JaVale. He played the most minutes of any center on the Warriors. Pat McCaw, who started in place of Durant, was great. 11, 5, and 5, 3 steals, a block, and a 3. I've continually said this about McCaw since when he was drafted. To me, he is going to be the guy that eventually down the line replaces Andre Iguodala as that 30-minute bench guy, 27-minute bench guy. And he's been forced into early action here. And he's showing that he can hang in this league, and he is going to be a good player, and he's going to be a good fantasy contributor at some point. On the Portland side of things, Yusuf Nurkic made the surprise return. He was limited. He could only play 17 minutes, but his presence was important. He couldn't go much more because of the limitations, and that did hurt the Blazers. 2 and 11 with 4 assists in his 17 minutes. I don't think we're going to get fully fledged Yusuf Nurkic over in Game 4. So, I don't think that the Blazers have a huge chance. CJ and Dame both went over 30, 32 points for CJ, 31 for Lillard, and they both contributed in all the other categories. And weirdly enough, they both shot 10 of 23 from the field. Al-Farouq Aminu got 31 minutes and had 14 and 9 with a 1-1. This is the real indication of what Aminu can do. He's been weirdly limited to 23 minutes in each of the first 2 games, and then Nurkic comes back and he plays more. He should have been playing more from the get-go. Interesting to see how they manage that. Now, with Nurkic coming back, the guy that copped it the most was Mo Harkless, who started and had 1 point in 20 minutes. Evan Turner still played 40 and had 17, 8, and 3 with 2 blocks. And you would have to think that, given how competitive they were in this match, that they would stick with that for Game 4. The blue swimmer continues to be terrible. Crabbe had 6 points in 23 minutes, while Noah Vonleh was a solid 10 and 7 with 25, but a lot of his value is disappearing now that Nurkic is at least back and stopping the ability from Vonleh for going 30-plus minutes a night, which I think was going to be tough for him to do just at this stage. All right, let's move on to the next day's action, and that is Sunday's list of games in the NBA, and the first one of those we're going to talk about is the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers. The Cavs looking to close this out to sweep the Pacers after going up 3-0. The Cavs are favored by 4, and the total is 212. If we get first half Indiana here playing, then obviously we're going to get a close contest. If he gets second half Indiana, then it's going to be all over and the Cavs are going to smash through and win this pretty comfortably. In terms of DFS value in this game, there's not a lot in terms of value plays, but there are obviously, especially on DraftKings more, there are some guys that we want to look at. At point guard, we've got Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
He is at 7,900 on FanDuel. That's not a great price. 6,800 for him over on DraftKings. I really like that, and he becomes probably the premier mid-price point guard on the entire slate, Jeff. At that sort of salary, you almost banged in at him getting 30 minimum, and at 6,800, that's not a bad floor, and then he goes from there. But I do like that fatigue at 68. He's still strong on FanDuel, again, with their price elevation. Prices and value ratios that might not appear great on the surface are actually a lot better than what they have been in the past. Kyrie is at 9,500. Struggled a lot in Game 3. We saw him and Kevin Love bench for that fourth quarter. I don't think that that's going to be a common thing happening, but I also don't want to spend 9,500, especially when I can feel more comfortable at spending that 10,000 zone on LeBron, on Paul George, on Jim Butler, on Chrissy Paul without Blake Griffin, on those sort of guys rather than 9,500 for Kyrie. Now on DraftKings, Kyrie comes in at $8,000. That's a $600 price drop, so that is definitely something that I would be interested in. He's not going to do what he did in last game. He only had 21 points and did sit that fourth quarter out. I don't think that's happening again. So at 8,000 for Kyrie on DraftKings, I do really like that as a situation. Darren Williams, who played those minutes down over Kyrie in that second half, he only had 13 points in 22 minutes, so nothing to really write home about there. At shooting guard, Lancey Stevenson's at 54 on FanDuel. He's at 52 on DraftKings. I feel pretty good that you're getting 20 plus from Lance here. His role has been consistent through all 3 games so far, and I don't see any reason for that to change. So he'll be fine. J.R. Smith is always just a tournament guy, but to me, not even a real strong one at that, while Monte Ellis in his new bench role is worthless, as we know. At small forward, you've got a couple of ways to look at this here. On FanDuel, you can go CJ Miles, who's the new starter, at 3,200. Now, he only put up 11 in the last game, but he definitely has tournament upside as a starter. If he gets hot and plays 25 minutes and hits 5 threes, it's a huge possibility for him to go for 27, 28 points. And at 3,200, it's a really good start. Paulie George, on the other hand, at 10,300. I feel strongly about that for cash. I reckon he's a fairly locky type of guy. He's the same price on DraftKings. That's the zone I want to spend the money. It's on small forwards. It's on him. It's on LeBron. It's on Jim Butler. That's where the money I think needs to go on this slate. Speaking of LeBron, 12,600 for LeBron. We all love LeBron, and he's been fantastic. I'm not sure 12,600 is the greatest use of that cash. I would rather spend it on George. But say on DraftKings where he's at 11.9, it feels a little bit more palatable over there. So I'd feel happier about using LeBron at that extended salary. The power forwards, the Deuce Young, $6,000. Fine. You like what he's been doing. He had a good rebounding game in the last one. At $6,000 dues, I reckon he's absolutely fine to get stuck into again at that sort of a salary. As for Love, at 8,800, I want nothing to do with that. To me, he is a pivot, punt, GPP type of a guy that not many people will be interested in. I am definitely not interested in him. Kevin Seraphin also had a great Game 3, dropped in 23 points in that one at 3,100. That's a really good return on investment. He's ahead of Lavoy Allen. He's ahead of Al Jefferson. Whether he stays there is a little bit of a gamble, and you wouldn't want to trust that in cash. But out of all these cheaper guys, there is something to see there with Seraphin. And you can say the same with Channing Frye at 4,300, who did play over Love in that stretch. But if we're going to say that I don't think Love and Irving will sit the fourth quarter again, then we also have to say that I don't think Darren Williams or Channing Frye will play the entirety of the fourth quarter as they did in that Game 3. At center, not really interested in Tristan Thompson at 5,600. It's a little high. 4,700, sure, there's something there, but it is a limited upside play. And Miles Turner comes in at 7,400 on FanDuel. That's a no from me, but I like him at 5,600. We're almost talking a $2,000 price difference there. Miles at 56, I do really think is a strong option to have a decent Game 4 over on DraftKings. All right, let's move on to the next game. Where are we? It is the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder are favored by 1.5 points, and the total is the biggest of the day. It's 224.5. We know that the Thunder won Game 3, so they're now they're down 2-1 with the Rockets leading that series, but the Thunder favored here to square this series up at 2 games apiece. At point guard, we've got to focus on Russell Westbrook, of course, and he is expensive, $14,600. Now, he was the same price in Game 3 and put up 65. And you know what? 65 isn't a 5x value, but as I've banged on about for the last couple of days, is on FanDuel, you're not looking necessarily for 5x value. I don't think that 5x is going to be the cash line in most of these cases, given the way that they have changed their pricing. But still, that is a big price. I like him at 13.8 on DraftKings a bit more, but I definitely don't hate him over on FanDuel at 14.6. But it is going to be, he's not a core guy that I have to have Russ, because then building the rest of your lineup becomes a lot riskier. Now, to me, in a tournament, that's better, because if you put him in and then a few other low-price guys and you pick the right ones and they go off, then your score goes through the roof. But being able to establish that for cash is a little bit trickier, I think. Norris Cole entered the rotation because, of course, he did over Samaj Kristen. I just don't understand Billy Donovan's hesitance to use Victor Oladipo as the backup point guard and forget about Norris Cole, who's terrible, or Samaj Kristen, who is also terrible as a backup. So Cole is at $1,500, so he's stupidly cheap, but he's stupidly bad. So I don't think we need too much to say there. Pat Bev's at $6,100. He had a stinker of a Game 3 with just the 9 points in that one. Not that interested in him at that sort of an elevated salary. He's at 55 on DraftKings, so there's a little bit of interest for him over on DraftKings, but nothing that's too overwhelmingly fantastic. At shooting guard, Oladipo's at 59. I'm still interested in him at that price. Yeah, he doesn't need to do much. Again, with the FanDuel pricing, with it being so out of whack, at 5,900, he gets 27 or 28, then it's a done deal that there's value. So I do like Oladipo there. He's down to 53 on DraftKings. At some point, he is going to turn it on, and hopefully it comes here. Alex Abrines is just stupid cheap, 1,600. He had 13 points in Game 3, and that is a massive, massive win if he puts up 13 points at 1,600. Whether he remains in the rotation, he's played decent minutes Game 1, no minutes Game 2, decent minutes Game 3. I don't know what they'll do with him. It is a decent, if you're going with Russ in a tournament lineup, like stacking him with Abrines, it gives you a chance to get an Abrines who can come in and have an easier 7-8x value, and Russ gets you a 4, and that tends to balance it out a little bit. Lou Williams at 49 and Eric Gordon's at 53. I would take Lou over Eric any day of the week, just in terms of upside, but neither of them are strong cash plays. And Jim Harden's at 13.6. Yeah, I like what Jim's been doing, but 13.6 is probably pushing it a bit. On DraftKings at 11.1, I really like that for Harden. I feel pretty confident of him getting 50 plus at 11.1. That's a good price, but 13.6 on DraftKings is probably just pushing it a little bit too far. And in that case, I'd rather spend LeBron. I'd rather Paul George. I'd rather Russ Westbrook than James Harden over on FanDuel. The small forwards, Andre Robertson. Can you actually imagine a situation that we've got here that Andre Robertson is priced at 5,800? You never would have imagined that. You also never would imagine that in the first 3 games of this series, he's averaged 34 FanDuel points, which is just crazy high for a guy that can't do anything. It's getting a little high. 5,800 for Robertson, and my ability to continue to believe in him to produce at this level, it's waning. But we had the evidence of the regular season of him producing, and now 3 games straight in the playoffs, and it is a very Houston-centric phenomenon, but it continues to happen. The minutes are going to be sky high, we know that. So at 5,800, I don't think there's much tournament upside in there, and there is a bit of risk, and he's not just going to be a strong cash play to me, but this is a fairly strong run for Robertson against the Rockets of putting up consistent performances. Trevor Ariza is doing the opposite. He's been bad, averaging just 13 in the playoffs so far. He is just a tournament pick to me. And again, if I had told you this 2 months ago that Andre Robertson would be priced higher than Trevor Ariza, you would have told me to shut up shop, because I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's exactly the situation that we find ourselves in now. And even on DraftKings, he's at 4,800 Ariza. And I actually like that at 4,800 for Ariza on DraftKings. At power forward, Taj Gibson, 4,000, started off explosively in Game 3 and actually miraculously played 29 minutes. It's really weird that Billy Donovan did that and they won. No correlation, I'm sure. 19 points at 4,000 for Taj. I've got no problem with going back to him again. He's at 39 on DraftKings, the same. still a fairly strong play. He just needs to play those minutes. Whereas Ryan Anderson at 5,144 on DraftKings is always just a tournament player. I like it a little bit more on DraftKings, but I still have no way of trusting that for cash. Enes Kanter, just forget that. At centre, Steve Adams, 5,100, has been piss poor. No getting around that, but there is upside if you want to go with a low-price centre, which I can understand, although DeAndre Jordan's going to be the pick of the centres, I believe. Clint Capella, Nene, nah, I just don't see anything with their pricing or their production that really is making me go that way. Now, I don't hate Capella where he sits on DraftKings, where he's down to 5,000. That's getting pretty cheap for Capella, but still the way that D'Antoni uses him does put that sort of artificial, or not even artificial, a real-life cap on what he can do. The next game, the Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls. The Celtics got one back. They are now 2-1 down in this series, with the Bulls missing Rajon Rondo, who is out indefinitely, which is looking like about a week to 10 days or a couple of weeks, with his fractured thumb. Also sitting on the bench in the weirdest looking suit, a short sleeve suit, which I don't think I've ever seen that before, but sitting on the bench in his short sleeve suit. A couple of things I want to talk about before I talk about DFS for this game. The injury to Rajon Rondo and the fact that the Celtics won Game 3. Rondo is one of those guys, probably second to me behind Derrick Rose, that has an inordinate amount of fans on the internet. Just way more fans that are very vocal about supporting him and love throwing out, oh, he's still one of the best point guards. He averages, double-digit assists. He's a terror on defense. And ignore what he's done for the last 4 years. And he's got a lot of fans like that. And so when he goes out and then the Bulls lose, the natural reaction of lots of people is, oh, see, Hoiberg ridiculous for benching Rondo during the season. See how good he is? No Rondo, they've got no chance of winning now. And, okay, I used to love Rondo. I used to think he was a great player in Boston, but I adapt to things pretty quickly, and he's been bad for a long time. And I admit, the last 2 months while Wade was out, and you're heading into these playoffs now, he's been really, really good. He's played much better basketball. By all accounts, he's been a fantastic teammate. Even with the weird stuff that's gone on, he's been a fantastic teammate and mentor. And I appreciate all that stuff from Rondo. I think he's been great in that respect. And he's been a fantastic player down the stretch here. But to me, to use one game and saying the Bulls are finished because they need Rondo, and the Celtics only won because Rondo is out, and variations upon that across that theme, which you might have heard. I heard it all over the place, that the reason that the Bulls are finished now because they don't have Rondo, because he missed a game and they lost, is bullshit. Because I'll tell you why. Because I could just as easily come out, and I'm going to do it right now, and say no. The reason the Celtics won is because they started Gerald Green. He didn't start Game 1, they lost. He didn't start Game 2, they lost. He started Game 3, they won. Therefore, the factor that caused them to win was Gerald Green starting. And anyone with any common sense or brains will laugh at that and go, it's not true. But the logic behind it is exactly the same as saying the Bulls lost because Rondo was out. That's the logic. And it's just not taking anything to do with how well Rondo's played over the last 2 months, but to say that he is the only factor that the Bulls won those first 2 games is laughable. It's the same laughability as me saying the reason the Celtics didn't win the first 2 games is because Gerald Green didn't play. That's the same logic. And if you laugh at Gerald Green, you should laugh at using that reasoning for Rondo. Now, Rondo's probably a big part of it because Jaren Grant was piss poor, but I'll tell you what, during the middle of the season, Grant was playing better than Rondo for big stretches of the season. And I give all this credit to Rondo. He's been fantastic, but I'm just trying to point out things that may not be 100% accurate, and we use sample sizes of one game to draw broad, sweeping decisions. And again, it was like me, and I said it completely as a joke, after Game 3 Raptors-Bucks, the Bucks won because they didn't play Spencer Hawes. And you heard me say that this is a joke. I know this is not true, but I'm getting off track here with Rondo. But it is a massive loss for the Bulls. I do acknowledge that. But as Greg Ehrenberg pointed out the other day, and we got into a few arguments with people, the Bulls were a better team with Rondo on the bench offensively and defensively all season. So it doesn't mean that the series is over because they lost the one game that he sat out. Let's get into the game. The Celtics are favored by 3, and the total is 204 points here. Point guards. Jaren Grant started the last game. Yep. He was one of those guys that was just bananas in his pricing, 1,500. And somehow, a starting point guard at 1,500 did not make value. He scored 5 points in game 3. That is unfathomably bad. Now, when Rondo was out at the end of the season, Grant was great. He was playing 30 minutes a night and he was looking fantastic. FanDuel's bumped him to 2,500. He's looked bad in the playoffs. I understand that. But at 2,500, I'm okay with going back to Grant. I probably have less confidence in him as a cash play, but I'm okay with going back to Jaren at that 2,500 price tag. Mick Carter-Williams, who played more minutes than Grant in Game 3, he's a $3,000 guy. He put up 12 points. I would much rather take Grant in a GPP than I would for Carter-Williams. I got to pay more for Carter-Williams, and I just feel like the salary or the production levels are going to favor more towards Grant. Now, if you flip it to DraftKings, it's the other way around because Carter-Williams is at 3,000 and Grant is at 3,700. So I'd feel much better about going for Carter-Williams over on DraftKings. But that's just a site-specific situation. Isaiah Thomas, he's at $9,000, 32 points in Game 3. I just don't feel like he's going to do it against Chicago. The Jim Butler defense on him is an issue. Michael Carter-Williams can defend him as well, actually. 9,000 is not the way that I want to spend 9,000. He's at 81 on DraftKings, so that's a lot more impressive or a lot more stomachable. So I'd be okay with using Isaiah over on that site, which of course is DraftKings. That's a little bit more appealing to me, but still it's not must play territory. We have Terry Rozier, who's been back in the rotation. He's at 2,300, 17 points in Game 3. At 2,300, you can't count that out. That's value. That's a tournament. That's that one that when you got Rondo at 15,000 and you want, oh man, who do I get at 2,000? Like Rozier's the guy you put in. If he gets 17 points at 2,300, you call that a huge win. And that really does help to build some of your GPP lineups without having full confidence in it. At shooting guard, much like Jaren Grant was a starter at 1,500, Gerald Green is a starter at 1,500, and despite him putting up just 9 points in 20 minutes, a game-winning 9 points in 20 minutes, $1,500, 9 points, ring it up, man. That's a win. That is a win for DFS. If you put up that sort of level of production at that lower salary, and it hasn't changed, you get me 10 points, Gerald, at 1,500, and we're talking. So I'm all for that. Dwayne Wade at 7,300 continually feels like he's just a bit too highly priced, but given the relative prices of everyone else, I'm not against Wade. If he gets 30 points at 7,300, you should feel confident. We should feel good about that. He's at 65 on DraftKings, and again, I'm not too far away from thinking that's not a bad spot for him. As for Avery Bradley at 6,600, a good Game 3 saw him get 37 points. I'm fine with using him at that price. I would, on FanDuel at 6,600 for Braddles and 73 for Wade, I would much rather take Avery Bradley than Dwayne Wade. Marcus Smart's at 6,400. That really doesn't do it for me. He's at 5,000 on DraftKings. So Smart at 5,000. He's been pretty much consistently smashing, or not smashing it, at least getting to that. So I don't hate him as a cheap cash game play, as weird as that sounds for Smarty. Small forwards, Jim, yet to have a good game in this series. Butler at 9,900 now on FanDuel, so that's a significant price drop. So I'm all about that at 9,900. He's going to have a good game. He hasn't had one in the first 3. He will have a good one. 9,900. I'm all for that. He's at 10,000 on DraftKings, so I'm much less interested in Jimmy Butler over on DraftKings. But at 99 on FanDuel, I'm in for that. And Jay Crowder at 6,400. I think getting 30 out of Jay is a relatively decent expectation. And again, with the ratios of everyone else's production, I think that you should feel all right about Jay Crowder at that sort of a price tag. At 53 on DraftKings, a similar story. Paulie Zipser, another strong game from him. 17 points in the last one. At 30, if he was at $2,500 guy, I'd go, yeah, let's go, Paulie. But at 3,900, I'm not really thinking that's the smartest way to invest. Nikola Mirotic, 6,500. He had 28 in game 3. I'm always interested in Mirotic. And at 5,100 on DraftKings, I don't see how you really go past that, especially for GPPs. But 5,100 for Mirotic, 30 points in the last game. No issue with him there at all. Bob Portis, one good game, struggled the rest of them. And Amir Johnson, who went to the bench so Gerald Green could start, he had 4 points in 6 minutes. The playoffs is weird. We see situations happening that we literally have not seen all season. It's happening all over the place. Toronto, Portland, Boston. Just lineups that you just never see. Chicago even. Stuff that just never happened in the regular season, where in the playoffs it just said, oh, well, cool, let's just do something we've never done at all. And that's exactly where we're at with it. At center, Robin Lopez couldn't keep up the momentum in game 3. Only 21 points there at 6,100. And you got Al Horford at 7,700. I think they're both decent guys to look at. I'm not really a massive fan of Al at 7,700. I much prefer Horford on DraftKings at 6,700. And Lopez at 61 is okay without being the strongest play on the board. Let's move on to the last game of the night. And the sad news is, and lots of people are willing to laugh at this, and it just pisses me off no end. And I'm no Clippers fan, but Blake Griffin is out for the rest of the playoffs with a toe fracture. Shit just always goes on with this Clippers team. Last year it was Chris Paul and Blake Griffin injured in the same game out for the playoffs. You want to talk about injury-prone players, and I hate that term, but Blake Griffin is more injury-prone than Anthony Davis. And he's already suffered that last year, the broken hand, the quad, and then the quad again in the playoffs. This year, the knee, now the toe. Just big chunks of time out for Blake. Now, Doc decided that in Blake Griffin's absence, it was a good idea to give 20-plus minutes to Paul Pierce. And they did somehow come back and get the victory, but it just doesn't make any sense that Paul Pierce is playing in the playoffs at all, let alone playing big minutes. And we did see him during the season decide to start Paul Pierce with Griffin injured. There's going to be no Austin Rivers for this game, so hold your breath, hold on to your testicles, because I reckon we might see Paul Pierce starting in a playoff game in April 2017. There is a massive show of that. So remember, no Austin, no Blake on the Jazz side. Rudy Gobert has gone from out to doubtful to questionable, and he's back to doubtful for this game. So unlikely that we see, according to Tim McMahon of ESPN, unlikely we see Rudy Gobert suit up in this one. At point guard, Georgie Hill's at 5,900. That is still one of the better point guard prices that is out there on the board on FanDuel. So I'm all about using Georgie Hill there. He's at 59 on DraftKings as well. I feel really good about that. He had a strong game 3 with 37 points. No worries with George. Really, really good price. As for Chrissy Paul, 10,300. He carried the Clippers in game 3, got them the victory. 10,300, 59 points in the last game. No Blake Griffin. It's all about Chris Paul now. And I don't care what anyone says. He is an all-time great. He's a legend. He's one of the best point guards of all time. And he is going to show us again here at 10,300. That is the way to spend up money, I think, is do it on Chris Paul in this situation. He's at 9.8 on DraftKings, and I've got no problem with that either. Fatface Ray Felton at 2,700. So the salary's coming down, but the production's not really there for Ray. But with no Austin, with no Blake, if they're going to start running these smaller lineups and push Marmute up to the 4, you might see a little bit of extra Ray. So put him in your GPP player pool, 2,700, get you 13, 14 points. You maybe 15 points. You're not far off, and you can do it. It's not a massive stretch for Ray there. Shooting guard, JJ's at 3,800. We have seen him at times when Blake has been out really put the foot down, get more aggressive, take more shots. So he's at 3,800. Go ahead. Same with Jamal Crawford at 4,000. Now, Crawford is always a risky proposition because of the nature of his play. He's at 35 on DraftKings as well. You really do have to look at him, though, just because if he gets hot and drops 25 and his minutes will push up again as they go small and push Marmute to the 4, you'll see Paul Reddick Crawford lineups. And that's going to allow these guys to get this bigger opportunity to drop 20, to drop 25. And I think that's what we're going to see for Jamal. So he is a strong GPP option. Rocket Rodney Hood, maybe. He's averaging under 10 points so far in this series. So there's nothing appealing there, but you never know. I do know, though. At small forward, Wes Johnson. Hopefully, look, the smart thing to me, Blake Griffin's out, you play Wes Johnson. I'm not the coach, so it doesn't matter. But he's at 1,600. Wes Johnson is the sneakiest 1-1 option in the entire NBA. If he plays 18 minutes, getting 10 points is not a huge stretch. And at 1,600, it works out. It is clearly a take a punt, a throw shit at the wall and see what sticks type of a situation. But it could. He's one of those guys that's in line for Griffin's minutes. Gordo Hayward shook off the shackles of Luke Marmute to drop 55 FanDuel points in Game 3. Wasn't enough for the Jazz. He's at 8,300. I still don't feel all that strongly about Gordo just because of the history of him and Marmute, but he's looking a little better. 7,700 for him on DraftKings is fairly strong as well. While Jingle and Joe's at 49, I think you look at Ingles, I go, he's getting me 20, and that's not a bad start at 49 in the current FanDuel salary climate. He's at 45 on DraftKings. I'm probably not quite there for him on DK, but much more interested on FanDuel. The other guy you do have to pay attention to, especially on DraftKings at 3,700, is Luke Marmute. He had 29 in Game 3. He's going to play a lot of minutes because he's going to match up against Gordo. He's going to have to play at the 4 a little bit as well, offensively. Put him a little bit closer to the basket, maybe a few tip-ins. 29 points for Marmute. You're getting 29 out of Marmute or getting Andre Robertson priced more than Trevor Ariza. I don't know what's the more higher surprise little in me. But Marmute, you can't discount him here. He has to be considered. He's at 43 on DraftKings, so that's way less interesting than what I would hope it to be. But on DraftKings, he is a man of interest. Joey Johnson's at 54 with no Gobert out. I think you look at him as a tournament type player. And the truth is at 2,400. If you're a nostalgia buff, go ahead. He's averaging under 6 points in 11 minutes in the 3 games so far. 2,400, that's not enough. But if they start him incorrectly and play him big minutes incorrectly, then maybe he puts up big numbers. But there's going to have to be a few incorrect things go down. But it is Doc Rivers, so who knows what will happen. But don't discount Paul Pierce because, again, we might see way too many minutes of him. At power forward, Derek Favors at 6,100. I'm just not really feeling it from Favors. It'd only be a tournament situation, I believe, for him. While Mo Spates is up to 4,500. He did see some extra minutes at power forward, but remember, during the season, he barely played next to DeAndre Jordan. He was almost primarily his backup, even when Griffin was out for months with that knee problem. So don't get overly invested because FanDuel's gone, righto, Blake's out, let's bump Mo Spates, and that's not the correct way to go about it, I don't think. So they've pushed him to 4,500, and I don't feel strongly that that's a great move for Mo. At center, this is where I love it. DeAndre Jordan, 8,600. Let's go with him. I really do like that. 79 on DraftKings. To me, that's the sort of center I want to build around when building lineups. You got your other guys like Georgie Hill and Paul George and Jeff Teague at the other end, and DeAndre is that center that you really want to look at without Blake. Yeah, more pick and roll options. No Rudy Gobert. I'm really interested in what DeAndre is going to do in this game 4 matchup. All right, let's look at the picks of the day before we roll out of here. On FanDuel, Jaron Grant at 25, Georgie Hill at 59, and Chrissy Paul at 10-3. Gerald Green at 1,500, Vic Oladipo 59, and Jimmy Harden at 13-6. CJ Miles 32, Jay Crowder 64, and Paulie George at 10-3. At power forward, Taj is 4,000, Thaddeus Young at 6,000, and Love at 88. And at center, Steve Adams 51 and DeAndre Jordan 86. On DraftKings, Carter Williams 3,000, Teague 68 and Westbrook 13.8. Jamal 35, Oladipo 53 and Harden 11.1. Marmute 37, Gordy Hayward 77 and LeBronald at 11.9. Ryan Anderson 44, Nikola Mirotic 51 and Paulie George 10.3. And at center, Steve Adams 46 and Miles Turner 5,600. We are done here, guys. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter and Basketball Monster at Bask Monster. Subscribe to this podcast and leave a review whenever you get a chance across on Apple Podcasts, as it's now called. And you can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, of course, as well. Good luck. Hope your team is going well in the playoffs. Hope your DFS lineups are going well. Hope your dynasty leagues are getting shaped nicely as well. We are done. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.